Good morning, welcome to Share and Torah Anytime. We're up to Melachim Beis, Perek Tezayin. B'shnas 17 Shana lePekach ben Remalyo Molach Achaz ben Yosam Melech Yehuda. So Yosam, we discussed, was in the Melech Yehuda, was a great tzaddik, perfect king, at least better than any of the rest. Discussed very much in short. Now we're going over to his son. As good as Yosam was, his son Achaz was the exact opposite, was the worst of the kings of Melech Yehuda. When Esrim Shana Achaz b'Molchoi, he was 20 years old. V'sheish Esher Shana Malach Yerushalayim. For 16 years he ruled over Yerushalayim. He didn't follow the path of his grandfather David. He followed in the path of the kings of Israel, which in general were wicked kings. To the extent, how bad did he go down the rabbit hole? He did the worst possible sin, which was that he gave his child over for sacrifice with the Molech. And here there's a fascinating Gemara. The Gemara says that when his wife found out that he wanted to sacrifice his son, which was Chizkiyahu, she was desperate to save him, and the Gemara says that she took the blood of a salamandria, and this blood of the salamandria is sort of fire resistant, and that's how she smeared him with this blood or this excretion, and that's what saved him from the fire, and he survived. I did a little research on the salamandria, so scientifically it's not considered to be accurate. It was an old Roman legend, Pliny the Elder. Actually, that's the urban legend, is that he actually took a salamander and he threw it into fire and he saw that it got burnt. It's called, I think, a fire salamander. There are those that want to argue that it's not a salamander, it's a newt, and that there are like proof that there's some type of like a foamy excretion that could make it fire retardant for a short while. It's a huge debate if it does exist, if it doesn't exist, but it's definitely something that was prevalent in all cultures back in that time. What I did find very interesting was that there are many, many examples of things which were considered, things that it says in the Gemara scientifically, which were considered that it's not accurate and it was impossible to be true, which later on, years later, was discovered that it could be. Like one of the examples was that the Gemara says that it's possible for a woman who had a C-section that she should be able to give birth normally later, which the Rishonim already struggled, like how is that even possible? Because, for so many, in the Middle Ages it wasn't possible, even beforehand. Even in the Byzantine period, there was no such, how could that have been? But that's something which is normal today. Chazon Ish has a letter about it. Another example that I found very interesting lately was that the shamir, the shamir worm that we know already when we learned about Shlomo Melech and Melachim Aleph, which was considered that how is it possible that there's a worm that could cut into stone? But then I saw that they found this worm in the Philippines in a certain small section, which you can Google it and you'll see videos about it, how it actually eats stone, it burrows into stone. Now if that exists actually in the same places where the stories in the Middle East, with the stories of Amnach takes place, that you can argue, but it definitely exists that there's such a thing. And I just saw an article where somebody writes that, technically, theoretically at least, you can have this worm burrow through and create a split, or burrow through in a rock, and then once you have that split, they used to split stone. How do you split stone without metal? That was always the question. How is it even possible? How do you use a shamir to split a stone? It's a rock. The answer is theoretically you can have these, there are worms that eat rock. And then once you put in dry pieces of wood in between the split that was created, and then you make it wet, and then when it expands, expansion causes it to split. So, just there is a practical, technical way how it could happen. And there's many other such examples. There's examples in astronomy of how they figured out, like Kiddush HaChodesh. There's a lot of things which we don't know. That means the fact that we don't know that something exists doesn't mean that it doesn't. Regardless, definitely the idea behind it, I was discussing it yesterday with somebody, the idea behind what the Gemara is saying is that she figured out a way how to glitch him out of the system, to glitch him out of the fire. That's definitely what the end of the story was, that even though he was slated to be sacrificed for the Melech, she figured out a way how to get him out of, the fire. But regardless, it's a Gemara in Chagiga, it's mentioned in a few places. Very interesting. Vayizabach, vayizabeach. So not only was he maver b'noi l'moilech, but vayizabeach, vayikater ba'bomois v'al hagvois v'sachas kol eitzeramim. This guy brought every single type of idol worship. If it was around, he did it. So when he was doing Hara Bein Hashem, there was Ritzin Melech Haram, Pekach ben Ramalia, and they come to. He was Melech Yisrael on Yerushalayim. Vayatzuru al Achaz. So they make a siege around Achaz. V'lo yochli lochem. He wasn't able to fight back. Not only wasn't able to fight back, be'esahi heishiv ritzin melech Aram es elas la'aram. At that time, Ritzin melech Aram went and he conquered back Elas, and he made a kibush. He took it back. So he expelled the Jews from Elas, which was common practice, that when you conquered enemy territory, you expelled the people. So now the Judean kingdom was at risk, and Achaz was very worried. So what did he do? So he sends emissaries, he sends a message to Tiglath-Pileser, which we discussed was Sancheiriv, Melech Ashur. And he tells him, Avdecho bincha oni. He says, I'm your slave and I'm your son. Why did he add, I'm your son? Because it wasn't only that he was his slave, meaning that he was agreeing to be subjugated under him, but he was also telling him, Ubincha ani, I'm ideologically your son, I follow in your path, which he did. You see that what everything Achaz was doing, that he was following his world philosophy. Therefore, he was asking him, Alei, I need you to come protect me, save me from my insurgents. So he sends him a bribe. Where does he get the bribe from? From the treasures of the Beis HaMikdash. So he actually pillages his own oitzis Beis Hashem, and he uses it to pay off Shoichet, which is really the end of the story. It's like when you do Hara B'Einei Hashem, Hashem tells you that you should serve Him. You don't. You're smarter, Kaviyachol, and then what happens is you end up having to take your own wealth and your own resources and use it to protect yourself. So that brings you even deeper in the hole, that you lose your own source of abundance. Yishmael of Melech Ashur. So Sancheiriv takes him up on the offer. Vayal Melech Ashur al Damesek vayispesel vayigoleh akira. So he goes and he expels the people from Damesek, and he sends them to a place called Kir ve'eser Ritzin, and the king Ritzin, who was fighting against Achaz, Hamas, he kills him. So the strategy works. So he's not done yet, Achaz. Now that Sancheiriv helps him, So now he's totally enamored and he's blown away, but wow, look how powerful Sancheiriv is. So he goes to the Mesek, he sees this altar which Sancheiriv had built in Vayishlach HaMelech Achaz El Uriah HaKoyen as the Muslim Mizbeach Vastavnisa L'chol Maseu. So he sends him architectural plans of exactly how you're supposed to build this altar, which was an altar for idols. Vayivad Uriah HaKoyen as the Mizbeach. Now, by his grandfather, when Uzziah, what was it? Azariah, right? First it was called Azariah and then Uzziah. When he went and he wanted to come into the Beis HaMikdash in order to bring Torahs, then 80 Kahanim stood and stopped him from coming in. But here, Uriah HaKohen went and he actually followed the plans and he built him this Bama for Avodah Zarah, with all of the details and the design. Came also Uriah HaKohen ad Boy HaMelech Achaz b'Damasek. Till Achaz returned back from Damasek and it was prepared and ready for him. So Vayovei HaMelech miDamasek. He comes back from Damasek, V'yar HaMelech es HaMizbeach. V'yikra HaMelech HaMizbeach V'yal Olav. So he brings on it oilers, he brings on them sacrifices, V'yakter es Elosoi Ves Mechosoi. V'yakter es Elosoi Ves Mechosoi, V'yasech es Niskoi, V'yizroik es Dom HaShlom HaShaloi HaMizbeach. So he's doing like sacrilege till the end. Ves Mizbeach and HaChosh is also Lefnei Hashem, and the copper Mizbeach. Vayakrev me'ez pnei HaMizbeach, mibein HaMizbeach, mibein Beis Hashem, v'yitnos al Yelech HaMizbeach Tzefoino. He moves it away. He moves it to the side because he wanted his altar to be the center. Not only that, Vayitzav HaMelech Achaz es Uriah HaKohen le'emoir al Mizbeach HaGodol. He tells them, okay, new way how we're going to do things from now on. On this new Mizbeach hakter es oiles haboiker, ves minchaso erev, ves oiles HaMelech, ves minchaso, ves oiles kol ha'amal minchaso v'neskeyem, v'chol dam oile, v'chol dam zeh, v'chol of tizroik. And the Mizbeach and the Choishes, that'll be my personal Mizbeach whenever I want to use it. So he's basically doing the worst possible, it's not only that he's bringing Avodah Zarah, he's using this place and the physical and the physical. He's being mevazed the zman, the mokoim, the chafotzim, every single thing that could possibly be humiliated and taken out of its proper context. That's what he does. Ayas Uriah HaKohen, Yichol HaShetiv HaMelech Achaz. So Uriah HaKohen is following him, Yichol HaShetiv HaMelech Achaz. Not only that, next level, what he does, like if you think he's not done yet, so there was these wagons which he takes away. This was the mizgeres which had these kiyorim on it that we used to wash your hands. He takes away the stands underneath it, these tray stands. Vayosar me'alem es hakiyor. Shlomo Melech built this beautiful Yom Shel Shlomo, which was standing on 12 oxen, and he removes the oxen, and he puts it straight on the ground. Pashup Pshat is that he didn't want Sancheiriv to see all of these, didn't want to see it. Now, I don't know if he didn't want to see it because he was afraid he was going to take it away from him, or he didn't want to see it because he didn't want him to think that there's anything left of the Mizbeach that's worth honoring. He wanted to, minimize the beauty and the splendor of the Beis HaMikdash because he was following the path of Sancheiriv. There was this canopy which was in the Beis HaMikdash where the people from the Mishmar who were for Shabbos and they had to wait until Motzei Shabbos, they had to have shade, so they used to stay under this canopy. He removed that too. And there was this entranceway with a stairway. He also removed that from Melech Ashur, and he made that the entrance to the Mizbeach had to go through his palace. So bottom line is, he totally destroyed any honor that was left to the Beis HaMikdash. Now, we don't see the end of the story, and I found it very interesting that When we're talking about Yosam, who was the ultimate good king, he's mentioned a few psukim and he's in and out. When you're talking about Achaz, we tell you the exact details of everything that he did wrong. And that's something that we see throughout Nach, is that we never know. We mamish never know. Like sometimes you have kings who are like almost perfect and they do one thing wrong and they get eradicated for it. Then you have other times wicked kings that just keep on going on forever. And then you have ones that, like even here in Achaz, you see that somehow it's working. He's in power for years, for 16 years he's in power, and that what he tries to do with Sancheiriv actually works, that he gets saved from it. And the answer is that we don't know. We mamish don't know. We mamish don't know. V'yaseh divrei Achaz asher asa aleim ksuvim al sefer divrei Yomim l'malchi Yehuda. V'yishkav Achaz im avosav v'yikaver im avosav v'ir David v'yimlech Chizkiyahu b'noi tachtov, which Chizkiyahu was, according to Chazal, was this kid who was saved from being sacrificed on the Moilach. But ultimately, what we have to remember whenever we learn Nach, it's about seeing the big picture. It's like when you're going to the details of every single specific story and every specific king, you're like, where's the justice in it? But we still learn Nach until today, because when you're looking at the big picture, you see that the fact that we're learning Nach today means that in the big picture, the world is constantly improving. It's always moving closer to world redemption. It's always getting developed, and all of the messages of Nach infiltrated all of the normative societies until to the point where we see that the tzedek and the social justice and the infrastructure and the way things were built is something which became part and parcel of all societies the way we know it today. So even though when we see things that don't make sense and we don't know, just know that in the end of the story, this is the story that shapes our reality and makes the world into a better place. Achai.